I'm going to set a timer when we are ready to really launch into the discussion for each person's piece. Even though I have an hour scheduled, what we find is that we end up going over that 10 minutes slightly anyway. So I feel like that just helps keep us on track, because I want to make sure we get to really talk about each piece today. So when it's your piece's turn to be discussed, and Shay, I think we'll probably do yours first, since yours is first in the docket. What I'm going to have you do is basically just tell us a little bit about this project and kind of your big picture goal for it, so that when we're talking about it, we can use that as context. And then if you haven't already noted, like if there's something specific you really want us to focus our discussion on, that's helpful, because you might want very specific feedback right now, or you might want us to just kind of talk about gut feelings, or just general reactions. Then during that time, Shay, for example, you are not going to talk. You'll keep your microphone off and just listen. If we have any major clarifying questions for you, there might be a time where we have you turn your microphone back on just to answer that question. I would say that that's rare, but it is something that kind of happens. If we're just like really stuck talking about something and we just need your input, then we'll ask. But for the most part, you'll keep your microphone off. So that goes for everyone when it's your turn for your work to be critiqued. My role is not to really weigh in with my own feedback. Of course, I'm always here to offer feedback, but I feel like my role here is just to kind of facilitate the discussion, because I want you all to just give each other thoughtful feedback. You all are probably the target readers for everyone else's work, since we're all working within the tabletop industry and community. And so I think that's just kind of a helpful way to think about it. Even if a particular piece isn't like 100% to your liking or taste, it's still helpful to think of yourself as a critical reader here. So that's why I kind of allow you all to have the floor and not really weigh in with my own thoughts and opinions. Just to kind of keep things easy to facilitate, I'm going to start by going kind of like roundtable, and we'll prompt you to share your thoughts, not because I'm trying to like call you out specifically, but it's easier to get the conversation going if I can just be like, hey, so-and-so, if you can start sharing. And then if you feel like you want to kind of bounce back and forth with each other, then I don't need to continue doing that, but that just helps keep things moving a little bit. Since there's just the four of us here, it'll just basically be two folks talking, like discussing one of the pieces. Annie, I had mentioned this to the others, but my internet's been kind of on the fritz today. So if I accidentally drop off the call or if I freeze, I will hop back on as soon as I just turn on my Wi-Fi hotspot to reconnect. So I will be back, but just know that could happen. It's happened a couple times today. But just FYI, if I disappear, I will be back.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Anyone have any questions about how this will go today? It's pretty casual, so don't feel nervous. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get my timer set up, but before I press start, I'm going to let Shay tell us a little bit about your project, about this particular project that we're reading a passage from, a little bit about this section specifically, and anything else you want us to specifically hone in on while we discuss today.
Yeah, great. So thank you, everybody. My submission is my introduction and the adventure hooks. And the introduction is literally like the first thing the DM will read. All it is like a fun little kind of like flavor text to kind of get them in the mood of the adventure, hopefully excited for it. I know currently as it stands, it's a bit gratuitous in its length, so I'll definitely kind of shorten it down in the final form, but kind of it is what it is right now. And then for the adventure hooks, I'm definitely looking to see, I want to make them as engaging as possible and hopefully make the players curious about kind of what's on the other side. Right now, it's going to be a one-shot adventure. And essentially what it is that kind of this evil corporation is creating a small kind of franchise in this mine to create special weapons. And inside the mine are these crystals, which allow the creation of magical weapons. But for the druid who's been guarding it, inside is one specific crystal called the Mother Crystal, and it's going to gain sentience soon. So it's trying to protect it. Well, the main kind of boss of this mine wants to destroy it and utilize it or harvest it to make like a weapon of mass destruction. So I don't want to reveal too much, in my venture hooks, but I'm kind of that's where things are headed.
All right. Thank you, Shay. Okay, I'm setting my timer for 10 minutes. If possible, I'll let you know when we're about halfway through that. So Andy and Annie, you can just kind of know that that's where we are. Okay, timer started. So Annie, you had written up a beautiful document with a bunch of notes. I'm actually going to put it in the chat so Shay can see it. Shay might have already seen it, but thank you for both for putting so many comments in there. So I'm going to have, we have an Annie and an Andy, so I need to make sure I enunciate. Annie, I'm going to have you go first if you would like to share your initial thoughts on Shay's piece.
Sorry, did you say Annie or Andy?
You, yes.
Oh, me. Okay.
Annie with two N's.
Okay. Yeah. Um. So I thought that I've been talking to you a little bit, I think, about your project and like feedbacks. And again, I just think it's such a like engaging one shot. I really like the themes and the vibes. I liked your writing. I think it was really vivid. Um, so I'm trying not to just read off the document. But yeah, I think I had like a question about whether the um introduction was for like just the DM's eyes or box text to read, because if it was box text, I would think it needed to be shorter. But as it is, I think it's a really like lovely little blurb to get the DM into the vibe of the adventure. I really like your imagery. I really like the pacing, and the character personalities that I imagine you're showing through the intro. I think, and like I really don't think anything's like world endingly needs to be changed, and um I don't want you to feel pressured about changing anything based on my suggestions, because you know the story and game you want to make. But I was a little confused about the significance of the crystal and sort of the characters talking, and I imagine you're gonna introduce the premise like immediately after for the DM, but I just feel like it's important not to like leave the DM guessing or keep secrets from the DM at any point. So maybe a very short like premise blurb before the narrative one might help them better appreciate the details in it. Um, I think I listed a couple like just very nitpicky like flow um writing things in the document. Um, but again, not really a big deal. For the event, sorry, I'm talking really fast. I'm kind of nervous about critiquing for the first time. But for the adventure hooks, I think they're really diverse. I really appreciate the attempt to like cater to different player motivations. I might just not have read it correctly exactly, but um, I think some of them kind of combine multiple elements of player hooks. Like I think the Druid Rescue was like you can save a bunch of lives and also maybe treasure. And I wonder if it might be good to focus like the Druid Rescue one on the altruism, the chaos, encouraging chaos one on sort of like solving the mystery about the town, and then the headquarters one, I think it's pretty clear about like profit or maybe blackmail, whatever's going on there. I really like the headquarters letter, by the way. I think it's a really unique um hook and take on like a patron sort of thing. Also, I think maybe the rewards could be more like clarified um, specifically. I think that's about it. I don't want to take up too much time. Yeah,
That was great. Thanks, Annie. And
yeah.
actually, we're about at the halfway point. So,
Oh, good.
Andy, I want to let Andy share a few thoughts, and then I'll give you both a minute if you two wanted to discuss anything together, and then we'll wrap up this particular section.
Yeah, so I like the flavor text overall. I think that I come at this from a very nitpicky standpoint because I have aphantasia, so I can't sort of see things in my head. And so I really need very explicit, like, here is this thing, and then people react to it. Otherwise, I'm very confused while I'm reading, and especially while I'm listening. So, for instance, when you like refer to a shriek before I know who's shrieking, or like a crack before I know what the crack is, I can get really confused because things are happening, like the things are happening before I know what they are, and so I don't have a place to like put them conceptually in my brain. And so I got lost when I was reading it. Um, I also would suggest giving the GM the answers to everything that you want to be mysterious, because the GM needs to know early on what's going on so that they know why different things matter. Um, Again, to keep them from having to like rewind and reread stuff. So I would I I've thought about this a lot for mysteries, but it's like you can entice people with a mystery and give them most of the answer, like enough for context, like there's this mother crystal that's going to wake up. I don't know all of the implications of that, but that's cool and interesting. And I want to know that to know like what the adventure sort of is about. Um, and in the adventure hooks, it seemed like you were jumping between text that the players would get and text that the GM would read in a way that wasn't like clearly delineated. So I would have like a GM section that says like, this is what this hook is about. This is like, you can say whatever you want in there where it's like, this appeals to these kinds of players. You don't have to do that, but like you can put that kind of information there. You could say like the resolution of this quest hook is XYZ, right? You can give them like, this is the stuff to prepare for as you run the adventure. These are the things to look out for. And then you give the explicit player hook stuff where it's like, this is the text that you literally give to the players, which is really valuable because you only really have two chances to directly talk to players at the table, which is through box descriptions and through adventure hooks, right? And so you want to be really careful and like intentional about what information you put in those, because that's everything that they get directly from you. Everything else is through the filter of a GM. Those are my main thoughts. I think it's cool. I really like the letter from the headquarters. That was my favorite one. Partly because it's like, I don't know, you can't go wrong with a clandestine organization. But I would still want more information about it because it's like, I don't know who the local boss is. Like if I got that letter from our organization, be like, guess I'm gonna go kill a bunch of bosses, like whoever has a business, you know? So just try to like put yourself in the mindset of like somebody who doesn't know anything getting information from you is, I think, my main advice. Yeah, I was a little all
Awesome.
over the place, but those are my main thoughts.
No, that's great. And we have 2 minutes left, so we can kind of share any final thoughts. But I also just wanted to say that Annie had also said that she loved the letter from the headquarters. So I think you really hit on something there, Shay. That folks that, and I liked it too. So that's at least three votes for that one being really cool. So if that gives you kind of a idea for some more in that theme. Okay, you two. So I think what would be helpful at this point is just kind of like maybe summarize. I'm going to have you each kind of summarize maybe 2 specific things that you suggest Shay can kind of fix or revise when he goes back to this document, just to kind of, and I think this might be something we add to our calls. Like, what are just like two simple things, and you two might have the same, or you might have 2 different ones, but that will just, I think, give us each a really realistic, reasonable, like not daunting thing to do. And D, I'm going to have you go first. Do you have 2 things that you think that Shay could do right off the bat to revise?
Yeah, the 2 main things are in between the flavor text and the hooks, write a short description summary of what the adventure is going to be. It's like, it's for X level characters, this many, it's about this long, it has these pieces, it resolves in this way, right? Like just be really explicit about like what the adventure is. And then for the quest hooks, what I was saying is another specific piece of advice, which is separate it into player text and GM text, and tell the GM what they really need to know at the beginning of the adventure so that they're prepared to have players with that quest hook at their table. Those are the main things, I think.
Awesome. Annie, what are 2 things that Shay can do right off the bat to revise this piece? We'll go over 1 minute. That was my alarm.
Okay. Okay. I think I pretty much agree with Andy on everything. I think it's like context clarity to make sure the DM isn't like guessing about anything that's going on in the narrative blurb and or the hooks. So Andy said it a lot better, basically that, and also like clarifying the rewards and like focus and endings. So again, what Andy said of the hooks themselves for the DM. Thank you.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, that's our time for Shay's piece. Thank you so much, you two. It was great feedback. There's a lot of overlap and what you pointed out, but also some different perspectives there as well. So thank you both for the comments that you left for Shay. Shay, do you have any kind of clarifying comments before we move on to Annie's piece?
Yeah, first of all, just a big thank you. That's going to be some great insights. Love the idea of separating the GM and player text. I think that's really clever. But yeah, a lot of great stuff to go on. Basically, yes, I will have the classic kind of like overview and all that good stuff between, but just kind of, a word count submission sort of thing. But I'll definitely include more of that, not only before, but I'll try to weave it into the adventure hooks as well for the GM notes. Yeah, great though. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Shay. Okay, let's get to Annie's piece since and I'm going to have Andy kick us off after Annie gives your introduction. Just excuse me. I still have a cough. Just so you can share before you have to take off. So Annie with 2 N's. Will you please just give us a really quick introduction? Having a whole time today, you guys. About what you shared with us and what specifically you want us to focus on.
Okay. This isn't for like a specific project. It's sort of just set in the setting that I worked on for the world building challenge in November, and it's kind of taken over my whole life. So I would really like to do something in it, and this is kind of maybe just testing the waters for like the vibe of the setting, which is heavily based on exploration and ecological horror. So yeah, nothing really specific. I just want to check like balancing and if the vibe is there, like the aesthetic. Yeah.
Alrighty. Turning on my timer, and Andy, you have the floor.
These 2 items are cool as hell. They're very much up my alley. I had a couple of like, I think the vibes are immaculate. I think that the like ability, like flavor is perfect. I think it's super cool to like plant a sword and connect to the network of the deep woods. Like that rules. The only thing that I worry about with that specific ability is the like lag at the table between planting the sword and the interesting outcome, because you plant the sword, roll on a table to figure out which table you then roll again on in a way that adds a lot of steps between the action and the resolution, where the resolution depends also on the GM then going and reading something and like reporting it to the table, interpreting it, and like weaving that into whatever is happening at like in that scene. So I would look for ways to try to like minimize that lag time. You can do that in a couple of different ways. One way to do it is to cut out one of the roll tables entirely. So you roll on the D10 table and you make it a fixed event that scales each time that you roll it, so that the GM could just scan like, oh, what's the first result from all these tables? Cool, I got it. And then when they roll the first time, then they know, ahead of time, right? Instead of having to study each of the 5 different whatever. Like, I think that would save a lot of time and be really interesting. The other thing is, I think that your special ability, like the damaging abilities, could be stronger because you have specifically save or suck abilities where if the creature succeeds on their saving throw, nothing happens, which means that that creature has totally wasted an action. And that is devastating because the action economy is already against creatures in D&D 5e. So you can make them take half damage, but none of the other effects. You can amp up the damage so that it's like swingier. Like there are just different toggles that you can do for it. You can give them more like bonus actions and whatever just to like smooth out the average damage that they do in a round. But I would recommend looking for places to make sure that they get to do something and have an effect on players. The same thing is true of the other creature, where you have like a 3d6 ability that's in like a 10-foot cube. And the only way that that's actually going to be better than just always doing multi-attack is if you like have a bunch of creatures and a bunch of them fail their saving throws. So like up the damage, give them half damage on success saving throws, and like maybe even make it like a reaction or a bonus action or something. Use other parts of the action economy to make the creatures like more interesting and do more things. It's like the main thing. The other stuff is just nitpicky detail questions.
Awesome. Thanks for your insight. I know you have to take off in a couple of minutes, Andy, so thanks for being a part of our call today.
I've got I can stick around for another like 10 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. All right, Shay, would you like to share your thoughts? You left some really nice comments in the document, so thanks for that.
Yeah, you betcha. So I'll just start from the top and go down. I kind of have a separate one that goes in tandem with the notes in the document. So root color, awesome, flavorful item. I think I was worried that it might be too powerful with 3 abilities, but I realized that the networked inside is really more of a storytelling ability and not one that will benefit the user in combat or exploration, like providing flying or invisibility. So I think the power level is probably just fine. For network inside, it really feels compelling, like a story-driving ability. So I would recommend having the item early in the adventure so that the players can fully utilize this ability and so that it can have an impact on the unfolding of the story. As it currently stands, the items are definitely DM heavy because there's 2 dice rolls, which aren't necessarily a bad thing as long as the tables are easily accessible. I do feel that the sheer amount of variety that it might make some DMs a little nervous to have to come up with so many different potential options. I think you could probably cut 1 and it would still be awesome. Up to you, of course. And I mentioned it in my notes in the document that the lurking danger effect, the roll 1 to 3, could be reworded so that it's clear that it was a negative effect of the gamble moment that you were going for. And then give a suggestion in the document just for some prompts. Exit from the story. I think the passage was really evocative. The wording like fleshy petals, exhale the vapor that shimmered and flies the size of coins. It creates a disturbing and rather disgusting image, which I think is what you're going for, so well done. I had a few small edits I mentioned in the document regarding some word selection and trimming. You can just take a look at those. And then for the corpse bloom, a really fun and terrifying creature. The fact that it can swallow its victims is absolutely terrifying and cool. Perhaps it could be, the vulnerability to cold. I wasn't sure if that was D&D canon. I think you had resistance to cold. And I thought maybe it should be vulnerable to cold, just to be like a normal plant. The aura of flies, because it references diseases. Ideally, that you'll have diseases in your adventure to make sure that that's an applicable ability. Mm-hmm. And then for the digestibility, it's currently tied to having the creature double slam a single target. Perhaps because it's such a cool ability, perhaps there's another way that the plant could try and grapple the unit to have this effect kind of begin. So that way, because right now the plant has to kind of like use all of its abilities at one single target. It might be kind of cool if it could damage one unit, but also try to suck another one in or something along those lines. And also, because it's a really slow lumbering plant with short range, I'd be very wary of players running out of range and using range attacks on it. So you'll probably want to factor that into your map design, or perhaps increase some of its ranges of its attacks. Overall, these are some. There's a lot of exciting elements for an ecological adventure, featuring both horror and plenty of exploration for the players to discover. So looking forward to how this develops. Awesome work.
I feel like you just gave Annie a great tagline, Shay. Like your final, like your conclusion was like a pitch, which is great. Okay, well, we have like 2.5 minutes left, so I think you both kind of already touched on this, but like when Annie goes back to this document to make some changes, Shay, what's the first thing you think Annie should focus on?
Yeah, I like to see the root caller of the network inside ability just be cleaned up. I think Andy made some great suggestions for that as well. I think it just could be like tidied up so it's a little cleaner and easier for the DM. And then for the corpse bloom itself, I think the range issues could be a problem as far as if the players could just stay out of its range. So yeah, maybe just tweaking it a little bit, whether the range of its abilities or the speed of itself. So or the map design.
Okay. Andy, what are things you think Annie should focus on first during revisions?
So I mentioned trying to cut out one of the random elements from the root collar ability, and I think that would help a lot. I think with the corpse plume, I think that you would discover this when you run the monster or playtest it, how much it matters to have that short range and like slow speed. If you found it to be a problem, which it could be, you could do something really wild and let them auto hit when they attack from surprise and give them something like a false appearance or whatever, so that you don't actually recognize it as a monster. It just looks like a normal plant, right? So like you could sort of play with other ways to like lean into its sort of ambush predator like aspect, because it clearly is if it only moves 5 feet per second. So just like look for ways to lean into the power fantasy and make it really scary and try to give it an opportunity to actually eat somebody before players are like, oh, okay, it's time to cheese, stand 20 feet away and pew pew until it's dead, right? Those are my main suggestions.
Okay, perfect. We have like 11 seconds left and less than that now. Okay, thanks to you two. That was very helpful. Annie, do you have any clarifying comments or kind of like final follow-up questions before we move on?
Oh, not. I think everyone was really clear. I had to stop myself so many times from reading and just going, "Thank you so much." But yeah, I really appreciate the time you guys have given me, and I have like no experience with balancing, so I'm definitely going to take all your comments to heart. And the point about like the DM involvement is so valid. I didn't even think about that. So definitely, I will work on it and refine it. And just thank you so much for all your time and kind words.
Buy this book, Forge
What
of
is it?
Foes.
For your
Forge of
foes?
Foes.
Okay.
There's a table in it. I mean, I guess I could just send you a screenshot of the table. I use this table constantly. It's just like CRs, recommended average per damage per round, like
Oh, that would be
HP,
so
AC,
helpful.
DC. It just gives you everything, and it's really easy to like pick things from the bottoms or middles or tops of those different ranges. And
Okay.
it works great. So
Yeah, thank you. By
yeah,
the Lazy DM or
yeah,
Slife. Okay.
Mhm.
yeah.
Thank
Ashley
you.
put it in the chat.
Oh,
Ooh,
awesome.
the last thing I want to mention for the corpse bloom is that because the second effect of its digestibility is actual death, you'll definitely want to make sure that that's kind of clear to the players somehow, so that they're not like, "Oh yeah, I'm grappled, ha ha ha," and next turn their character just dies.
Mm.
Yeah, that makes
So,
sense.
as long as they know the stakes, kind of thing. But
Thank
yeah, it's
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yay. Great. Thanks, everyone. Okay. Last but certainly not least, Andy, we have your piece. Before you have to hop off, do you want to just give us a quick intro to your piece real fast?
Yeah. So just orienting people to what the players are doing. They've just arrived in Hallowhome with a shipment of food that they've been hired to escort, and they're supposed to deliver it to Elder Brindlebrow, who they discover is petrified, in that excerpt that I sent. So the players don't know a ton yet, except that they've spoken to the guard captain at this point, who's like, "Hey, you gotta tell Elder Brindlebrow, don't ask about the druid. All right, she's gotta stop, or Marvo's gonna screw her up, and I can't help her." So there's sort of that preface, And then they like go to the town hall with all this food. And it's like, oh no, she's a statue. This is terrible. And then they get attacked by the creatures that demonstrate what's going to happen to her if they don't save her. So that's sort of like the whole like little encounter. Um, and then hopefully they care enough because this is the lady who's supposed to pay them, and they're being led by her daughter, who's like, oh no, my mom is a statue. So there are like a couple of pieces there. That's pretty much all the context. Other than that, there is this basilisk that like petrifies creatures, injects their eggs into them, and then they like hatch out like Alien from the movie. So that's the vibe.
That's the vibe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Also, thank you for doing a character voice. That was delightful.
Can't resist.
Alrighty, I'm gonna set my timer, and we'll have Andy be muted. And yeah, if you have to take off, we'll make sure that you can get the recording. Of course. Okay.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. All right, you two. Let's see. Annie. Now that I don't have to distinguish between Annie and Andy, although I guess I still kind of do since we're discussing Andy's piece. Annie, I'm going to have you go first. And yeah, just thanks again for this thoughtful document you put together with all of this feedback for your fellow writers. So yeah, you want to share some of your thoughts? I think we have a muted Annie, but also I don't know if you're.
Oh my god, I was talking. Yeah.
So yeah, it happens.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, very, very big fan of ecological horror creature design, in case couldn't tell. So I really like the eating prey from the inside out, like very chilling creature design. I think the adventure was, I know he was a bit, or they were worried about like the layout of things. I thought it was pretty clear. I got through it fine. I had a couple of suggestions for readability, but they were like minor grammar things mainly that are in the doc, so I won't go over them. I think that Elwyn rushing forward, I think there was some worry about it being like taking away player agency, but I think it's fine as long as the players are given a chance to stop her through like social roles or whatnot. I think they also asked about the flavor text for the Radalisks. I think it's fine to not have that in the main adventure, but if this is for a preview, then having a picture of them or some flavor text or description might be good for the person reading to visualize the monster and be tempted to get the adventure. The section does kind of jump between like narrative and then mechanics and then like outcomes and then quest a little bit. I don't have a good like specific idea of how to exactly reorganize them, maybe by grouping the different categories a bit. But I can't really visualize that on layout, and this is already so nicely layouted. So I think the biggest thing is I want to make sure that obviously I don't have the whole quest, but that the players aren't locked out of completing the quest if they just miss like one roll or can't connect it to Marbo. And Annie's really good at doing mystery, so I'm sure he already knows that. They already know that, but just multiple ways to save Mildred or figure out that Marbo's the one doing all this. But yeah, I think that's all.
Awesome, thank you. Shay, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. The adventure itself is really fun. There's the mystery of the petrified character being at the heart, and you have the combat with the unique Radalisks. My main concern is that Elwyn starts the encounter pretty much on her own volition, which can feel a bit like the players are watching a cutscene rather than kind of engaging the area that you set up in the box text. Also, you mentioned that if Elwyn is escorting the party, but if she's not, then the characters currently would have no idea who the statue was because Elwyn recognizes her. Although you mentioned that now that with the background, the players will have a bit more info. So I guess that's kind of just a challenge of a shorter submission. And currently, the players being able to know that a creature's saliva was the cure to a petrification is from a dice roll. So if they fail that, there'd have to be another way for them to find out that information. And then I think you can reorder statue identity ahead of investigating the statue. This would allow you to completely remove the first sentence from investigating the statue, which is would be made redundant from the text in the statue identity. Since the swarm of Radalisks happen as soon as the characters see the statue, I would move it up earlier in the text purely as a layout adjustment for the DM. Then there is a Radalisk, a Paralisk, and a Brasilisk. It's a lot to track and to get sorted in one page. I'm not exactly sure why a Paralisk makes Radalisks, but I'm sure you might explain that later on. And then I feel like the text doesn't quite tie the Radalisk encounter and the statue into the Elder Brindo Boar's quest. I think there has to be other clues to lead the party to Marbo or the tavern. Also, it seems that the players would have to get the saliva, save Elder Brindlebro, and then learn about the druid. Although I guess you just mentioned that the druid is mentioned earlier. But yeah, unless otherwise you would have to save the druid kind of incidentally throughout the adventure as it stands right now. And then for rescuing the druid, the premise behind it, like abducting the druid to make berries for the crew, is interesting, but not over the top dramatic. It doesn't seem like a horrible fate, but also not ideal. So maybe the stakes are rather low right now for the druid, so maybe you could heighten them a bit. Maybe he's like has to create actual like animals, so it kind of drains his own power, and then he has to watch his own kind of precious animals be eaten by the crew, so that could maybe heighten it a little bit. And I think the rewards are fun, with one-time uses, putting a lot of agency into the player's hands on when to use them, just as long as they remember that they have them. And then I think the page layout is very clean. It uses the classic sort of two-column layout, which is familiar to D&D players, which is great. But you have a slightly unique take on it, which helps set it apart. The text is broken up nicely with varying headers, 2 fun ornamental text boxes, and a clean footer. I think the core parts of bringing the players into the mystery are there, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what exactly this Wizard Green is up to.
Awesome. Thanks, Shay. All right. We have just a couple of minutes left. So, and we can kind of wrap up with what we've been doing for the other ones. So, Annie, can you share what you think are the first, like, 1 or 2 things that Andy can do when they go back to revise this?
Yeah. If they haven't already, I think adding multiple pathways to make sure that the players can achieve success without hinging on like just one roll or one discovery, both in saving Mildred and uncovering what's going on with Marbo, and also just general like streamlining of information that I have in my document and clarifying some language and sentence structure stuff.
Great. Thank you. Shay, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think just having a really clean tie-in from this encounter with the statue and Radalisks to the tavern and Marbo. I think just really tying that in to make sure that that's kind of the next step for the players is number 1. And then number 2, just kind of clarifying that very initial moment on how the players or Elwyn will get involved with the Radalisk encounter.
Okay, so that puts us right at our time, actually. We had like a little under a minute left, but that was perfect. Okay, well, thanks, you two. That concludes our critique session, our last one for this year. Really appreciate all the time and consideration you gave to one another. It really means a lot to see you all giving each other such thoughtful feedback, being so encouraging, just being so detailed. So I hope you feel like you got some really helpful comments on your own work. If you liked this format of the critique call, let me know. I always want these to feel worth your while and to feel like you got something out of it. We can always change them up or do something different. This is just the style that I'm used to doing for other types of critique calls, but we can do anything we want to do. So just let me know. Feel free to send me feedback wherever you feel works best for you. And then I think we'll get another critique call on the books. Let me check in with you all in January to see where everyone's at with after the holidays, and I know everyone's talking about maybe doing something cool for a game jam. So I think I want to make sure that the critique call is like fits where everyone is with their projects. But that's pretty much all I have for you today. So you get 15 minutes back in your day. But if you have any other thoughts or comments on one another's work, I will leave the doc available so you can continue to go back in there. And then if you want more feedback on your piece after you make revisions, post it and share and review, and I'm happy to weigh in there as well. I just like to give you all the opportunity to talk and not listen to me talk all the time. So that's pretty much it. Anything else you two wanted to bring up today?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Ashley, for organizing this, and thank you, Annie and Andy, for the wonderfully detailed and thoughtful feedback. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say thank you for the insight and thoughtfulness. And it was so great seeing everyone else's ideas. And thank you, Ashley, for setting this up. And thank you, Shay, for organizing the game jam. I'm really excited about that.
Yes, I will keep an eye out on that discussion to see what everyone's kind of leaning toward, and I'll let the team know, because we want to be on hand to support you. And if you all decide that you want to put together a book or we want to do a campaign, like, we can help with some of those more logistical things. But ultimately, I'm going to leave a lot of the creative choices to you all, because it's all dependent on your bandwidth next month or whatever. And also, if we can't get something going, it's okay. We can still do something next year, and we can crowdfund on Crowdfunder at any time. It would be fun to do something during that month. We also could launch it at any time in February, so it doesn't have to be a February 1st thing. It could be at any point. So just putting that out there. So if you're feeling excited but kind of not sure how it's going to work next month, I think we can figure out something that works for everyone. So just feel free to tag me in there when you're ready to kind of talk next steps. But yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, crew. That's it from me.